Voice Notes is a really handy tool. It's this icon here, second to the end, and you can use it a lot like you use the comments section over here of Google Docs. So if you needed to provide feedback on a doc that a student shared with you, or you wanted to add something more to a document that perhaps you created for a student, you can tag a voice note to it. This is especially helpful for students who struggle with reading and use Read and Write for Google to play their documents to them, to read their documents to them, because the student can then listen to your comment rather than have to figure out what it says by reading it. So let's give it a shot. I have here a proofreading checklist that I'm sharing with my students who use Read and Write for Google and may be composing their work using talk to text or word prediction. And therefore, proofreading is really important to make sure that it says what they intended for it to say. They do this by composing their writing with talk to text, then playing it back and listening to whether it sounds right. And then they need to go through this checklist to make sure that all of the mechanics are in place. So let's say they're reading along using Read and Write for Google to determine what order and organization means. So they would put their cursor where they left off, press play.
Order and organization. The sequence makes sense. All sentences are complete. Paragraphs are indented. The piece is neat and easy to read.
They press stop and they think to themselves, paragraphs are indented. I can't really remember what indented means. And sometimes I do have a couple of students who struggle with indenting their paragraphs and remembering how to go about doing that. So I'm going to highlight the word indented and I'm going to add a voice note. The microphone will pop open and I can just click the microphone to record. If you are using a keyboard for writing purposes, you can simply press the Tab button to indent your sentence. I can listen to my recording. If you are using a keyboard for purposes, you can sometimes we get a little funky, especially if we have Screencastify running, so we have to try again. If you are using a keyboard for writing, you can simply press the Tab key to indent your sentence. Let's try again. If you are using it for writing, you can simply tap the key to indent your sentence. Let's see what happens if I insert that, even though it sounded funny to me. It takes a couple of seconds. You can see there's an orange scrolling across here, orange color scrolling across. That just means that it's getting ready to add it. So now it looks kind of like this big long URL here. If I hover over it, it turns into a play button. If you are using it for writing, you can simply tap the key to indent your sentence. Okay, well, it's funky because we have Screencastify running. But here's one that I recorded before we had the Screencastify running at the same time. They're competing for the microphone. Don't forget that not every sentence ends in a period. Make sure that your punctuation matches the type of sentence you wrote. So that's what it sounds like if you're not trying to use the microphone for two things.